Hey, microchurch. Hope you're having a great week so far. Today, we're going to be in Mark chapter 2, verses 13 through 17. And as you're turning there, one thing I want to kind of bring up or talk about is this idea of a cancel culture, right? We live in this society where we're willing and where we do cancel other people out simply because we don't agree with them on something. Maybe we don't agree with their political views. Maybe we don't agree with their religious views. We don't agree with what comic book series they like or whatever crazy thing like this. And so we just cancel them out. Here's what that boils down to. It boils down to this idea of self-righteousness, right? When we judge other people, when we impose upon them our ideologies and that our ideologies are better, what we're doing is not only creating a cancel culture, we're feeding this beast of this us versus them culture as well. And that's not what Scripture teaches us, right? That's not what Scripture shows us. And we're going to see that today in Mark chapter 2, verses 13 through 17. Check it out. It says, once again, Jesus went out beside the lake. And so he was in Capernaum, and then he goes out back to the Sea of Galilee, out to the lake, and he starts teaching again. And it says a large crowd came to him, and he began to teach them. And as he was walking along teaching them, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax collector's booth. And he looks at Levi. I love this. He looks at Levi and he says, "Follow me." Right? Follow me. And Jesus told him, and it says Levi got up and it followed him. Now here's the incredible thing, right? This is incredibly scandalous if you really think about it. Levi was a tax collector. And I don't know if you know much or anything about Jewish culture, but tax collectors were Jewish men, Hebrew men that joined forces with the Roman Empire, and they imposed the Roman taxes and their own taxes on the Hebrew people, on the nation of Israel. And so they were despised people. People hated the tax collectors. And not only that, they were seen as sinners, unrighteous, all of these things. And so they were really seen as like the lowest of low, right? Scum of the earth, essentially, that had money. And so that's what we're looking at. That's who Jesus looks at. That's who Jesus sees. And that's who Jesus says, hey, I want you to follow me. What an incredible thing that we see. What an incredible picture that this person that we would look at and that society looked at as despicable, as someone that we should cancel out, someone that we shouldn't have anything to do with. And Jesus looks at him. It not only looks at him and sees him, but says, follow me. And what this means is that when Jesus looked at Levi, Jesus saw Levi for who he created him to be. Right? He saw the life that Levi was living. He saw the way that Levi treated other people. But he also saw the Levi that he created. And he looked at Levi and he said, hey, I want you to come out of that life. And I want you to walk in the newness of life that I offer. Come follow me. And what an incredible moment of scandalous grace that this really is. You see, grace is undeserved favor from God, right? It's undeserved forgiveness. There was nothing that Levi had to offer Jesus but himself. And Levi understood this, right? And we know that Levi understood this because it says that Levi got up, he left everything, and he followed Jesus. Right, but the story continues. This is the amazing thing. The story goes on and it says, while Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, and so Levi, after Jesus calls him, Levi invites Jesus over to his house. He says, come eat with me. Come eat with my friends. I want you to meet them. I want my friends to know who you are. And it says, while Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples. So his disciples were there too. It says, for there were many who followed him, and when the teachers of the law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with the sinners and the tax collectors, they asked his disciples, why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners? On hearing this, Jesus said to them, it is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but as sinners. And so Levi invites Jesus over. He invites his friends over because he wanted his friends to know Jesus. He wanted them to experience the freedom and the joy and the life that Jesus had just invited him to and just offered him, right? He wanted them to experience the grace that Jesus offered. And so he invited all of his friends over to have dinner. And as they were doing this, Jesus and his disciples, they were sitting there and they were eating with these tax collectors and the sinners. And the Pharisees, they look in and they see this. From the outside, looking in, they see what's happening and they ask, why is Jesus eating with those kind of people? Man, what an incredibly arrogant question to ask. And what an incredibly proud and arrogant question, right? You can only ask a question like that if you do not consider yourself to be a sinner, right? You can only ask a question like that if you see yourself as better than everyone else, as if it's an us versus them mentality, right? You see yourself above other people. Man, but Jesus' response is incredible. Look at it again. Jesus, hearing this, he said to them, is it not the healthy who need a doctor? It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but it is the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but the sinners. Right? Jesus sits with the despised. He sits with the rejected, and he loves them because that is who he came for. Right? And he knows that he is their only hope. Listen, he is our only hope, because the reality is we're not any better than someone like Levi. We're not, and we're not any different. You and I are full of the same capacity and the same sin as someone like Levi the tax collector, or Jacob the deceiver, even Saul the murderer. But hear this too, right? Jesus, in his unfailing grace and his unending love for us, invites us to follow him into a new life. And in that response, right, in that response that we make to him, he changes our identity. He calls us to live into the person that he created us to be, right? He's the one who made Levi into Matthew, right? He's the one who changed Saul to Paul, right? He's the one who changed Jacob to Israel, right? He's the one who did all of that, right? And he did this because of his grace. You see, God leads to a newness of life, and grace is where we find that. Grace is where we find forgiveness. Grace is where we find hope. Grace is recognizing that we have nothing to give to God, but God still invites us and calls us to follow him and to be a part of his family because he loves us. But here's the other side of it. Grace also recognizes that we have a part to play in this as well, right? Grace gives us the courage and the desire to see all of our friends and our family, right, that are lost and without Christ, and to sit with them and to eat with them and to hear them and to love them and to not cancel them out, so that one day we can point them to the one who extended his scandalous grace to us and who called us out of our old life and into this new life that only he can truly offer. Right? That's grace. And so here's my question for you as we end today. Right? Here's my question. What are you going to do to spend time with those who need Jesus the most? Right? If you want to reach the lost, we have to be with the lost. And so what are you going to do to spend time with those who need Jesus the most? All right. Hope you have a great week.